Today on Scarlet Rider's Geek Corner, we take a look at Kamen Rider 01 sequel film RealxTime, and to commemorate such an occasion, I believe the proper lighting is in order. Get it? Cause both suits are green. That went over a lot better in my head. If you guys like what you see here, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. Doing so helps grow the channel, please and thank you. Kamen Rider 01 RealxTime debuted in Japanese theaters on December 18th, 2020, double billed with Kamen Rider Saber in the Book of Ruin. This was the first December Rider film not to have both Riders team up. This was unfortunately due to the COVID-19 pandemic that broke out the same year. RealxTime was originally supposed to be released in August and a double feature with Kieran Major's film Bebop Dream, but the pandemic was in one of its many peaks and the studio was already having issues with filming over the prior 4 months due to outbreaks and new health guidelines. So both movies ended up being delayed, RealxTime being the 01 portion of the now separate December movie event, and Bebop Dream moved back to February of the following year. In the film you can clearly tell how the pandemic affected things. Early portions of the film has various characters wearing gas masks during ThinkNet's terror attacks, a clever write around to comply with safety guidelines. I also don't recall there being many scenes with large masses of people, though I suppose someone's definition of such would vary. To be blunt, we're lucky we got this movie at all. Canonically, the film takes place about 3 months after the TV show's final episode. With the arc gone and Metsubo Jirai reformed, a new threat has arisen to take its place. A mysterious cult dubbed ThinkNet has come out of the shadows and is led by a man simply referred to as S, or S, depending on whose subs you're watching. He's promised to all those that choose to follow him a place in a lush paradise of his creation. What's more, he has his own driver, Progress Key, and Thousand Jacker, a duplicate prop Toei obviously had lying around. Or maybe it's the same one. S also has his armies of foot soldiers, each armed with their own drivers, transforming them into riders themselves, Kamen Rider Abaddon. And I just want on record, no, I don't consider Abaddon to be an actual Kamen Rider, because if we were going by that logic, the Ryo Troopers from Fives would be in that category, and I'm just not emotionally ready to take that leap yet. S makes his proclamation to the world as his cult launches a global-wide assault, using gas on innocent civilians in major cities. Aruto confronts S using the 02 driver, but despite his best efforts is beaten by S, who sports some incredible feats such as regeneration and transmutation of a blood-like substance. He takes the 02 key, and before Aruto can switch to his 01 driver, S blows him back, which results in a not too cushy landing. Aruto awakens in a subway car by himself, his injuries virtually non-existent, where he meets a woman by the name of Akane, who's surprised that he's even conscious. When Aruto exits the train, he's met with the comatose bodies of several civilians. Elsewhere, an AIMS platoon led by Yua confronts ThinkNet's higher-ranked generals, and during said confrontation, Yua fails to save a fleeing elderly couple from the terrorist bioweapon. That same elderly couple then reappearing unconscious in the vicinity of Akane and Aruto, which is to give us the assumption that Aruto must have died when his body made the impact with the vehicle. Meanwhile, it wouldn't be anything 01 related without our resident best boy Fua on his own kicking ass and taking names. Once ThinkNet's reinforcements arrive, he gets some assistance from Hirobi, and the two quickly make easy work of the dollar store riders. However, upon closer inspection, there's no one residing in the suits, much to the shock of Fua and Hirobi. During all this chaos, Izu is easing closer and closer to Singularity, as she spends the early events of the story following Aruto's request to inform AIMS, Metsubo Jirai, and Guide of what little info he has on S, and that he's possibly connected to the Ark, hence the driver. It's during a look into Izu's memory banks that we see Aruto isn't quite over the original Izu's death, and doesn't want a repeat of said tragedy with this version. We're reminded that this isn't the original and that she's a blank slate. However, an example of her gaining closer and closer to sentience, we see that she is worried for Aruto since he hasn't reported in since his confrontation with S. Meanwhile, Guy manages to intercept one of his Zaya executives, bags packed, attempting to skip town. Jin manages to hack into the ThinkNet's mainframe, and the Fua and Hirobi duo is met with a fighter jet for his trouble. Our impulsive badass Fua engages it, just to find out that there's no pilot. But there is a red gas inside, the same red gas that was inside the Abaddon suits when they were empty. To which Jin arrives to inform us that said gas is just a cluster of nanomachines. And of course, no good deed goes unpunished, as just because you're best boy doesn't mean that the laws of physics don't apply to you. Aruto and Akane arrive at the church, where we see a Thousand Jacker on a pedestal similar to the one at the stadium where he originally fought S. As it turns out, Aruto isn't in the afterlife, but his consciousness was uploaded to a server that's located on a computer mainframe somewhere. The innocent civilians caught in the gas attack all over the world are having their consciousness brought there, Don't ask the science behind it, the only response I can confidently give is, shut up, it's f***ing Toku. But you'll recall, Aruto wasn't hit by the gas. Well, his consciousness was digitized by Seiya through the 01 driver. Before the scene reaches its end, it's made abundantly clear that Akane and S know one another, as she blames herself for the hell the world is being put through at the moment. S's true identity is that of Ishiki Rahito, a scientist that worked in this research and development on nanotechnology, primed for use in the field of medicine. Something went horribly wrong, however, on the day of the Daybreak incident 13 years prior. Not only did the Ark take over the human gears, but the nanotech was affected as well. Before Akane's being faded away completely, Rahito was able to take her consciousness and upload it onto a server. And again, if you're going to ask me how that works, I refer to the prior statement. Those impressive abilities that Rahito was pulling off as Kamen Rider Eden, well, he's actually made of nanomachines as well, his original body being burned to a crisp. Initial news reports a few years back even stating that he had died in a lab fire. Aruto promises to Akane that he'll put a stop to Rahito, and before he disappears completely, she asks him to give the former a message from her, one that the audience doesn't get to hear. Aruto then awakens back where he made impact, and remembers he's still kind of f***ed up from the fall despite Seiya cushioning the blow. He gets to his feet and tries to summon Rise Hopper, but it's already been brought to him via Seiya thinking 3 steps ahead while he was still in the virtual world. Oh yeah, and Ikazuchi makes a cameo. He drove the semi, so contribution! He boards his ride and is off to confront Eden for the final battle. Back at the ritual chamber, the progress key Rahito is attempting to create is finished as he tosses aside the 02 key, having no further use for it. Aruto confronts him and transforms the 01 metal cluster hopper. The two engage one another, and this time Aruto actually manages to gain the upper hand by using the cluster cells with a suit to hamper Eden's nanomachines. Rahito gets desperate and grabs the 1000 Jacker, the timer still ticking, and gives a sample of what's to come. He initiates the Hellhopper key and creates a blast strong enough to kill everyone within range. Aruto deflects it as best as he can using the cluster cells, but is still seemingly injured in the aftermath. Rahito flees, leaving behind piles of dead bodies of his own followers, Aruto attempting to follow. The Seiya exec that Guy nabbed, Nodachi, meanwhile, is, I guess you could say, tortured and spills all he knows on ThinkNet. The cult ThinkNet is actually a site on the dark web for sick bastards who want to bring about the end of the world, and that their user base is at a rough estimate of 100 million. That's quite a societal issue, don't you think? 100 million black-pilled Andes? Maybe 01's world isn't so great after all. Back to the plot, we see the true identities of Rahito's generals, and yeah. So as it turns out, the Seiya spec provided by Nodachi allows the users to manipulate the nanomachines, creating the avatars of themselves. Digital avatars, advanced and highly capable of using the Abaddon risers. Also something to note here, Beryu, who is this guy, works at a mental health clinic. Fucking hell. Izu arrives at the scene of Ground Zero and finds the 02 driver in the rubble. However, Aruto nowhere near in the vicinity. Beru logs in as his avatar and sees the bodies at Ground Zero, the ones of S's disciples, and comes to the realization that they've been played. Naki meanwhile figures out the passwords for the crowding hopper keys, and Ames is able to hunt down one of S's ringleaders in the manga cafe. Then they use his Seiya spec to track down the location of ThinkNet's main server. Hirobi arrives on site and after dispatching some mooks finds that the mainframe is connected to a human brain, one that belonged to Tono Akane. Izu unfortunately is at a loss as how to proceed and locate Aruto, so she connects to Seiya and is there confronted by what I assume is the soul of the original Izu. She implores her to find and help Aruto and as a parting gift transfers her memories into her successor. I will get to my feelings on that one at the very end. Aruto catches up to Rahito in a real-world version of the chapel he visited in the virtual world with Akane. Rahito, however, is attempting to finish what he started and once again activates the Hell-Rising Hopper key, no longer waiting for the timer to hit 0. The two get into a struggle for the key, Aruto managing to snag it away from him, but he can't deactivate it. He decides that if anyone should die, it should be him, so that the rest of the world can carry on. He inserts it into the 01 driver expecting to be killed, but is transformed into our movie-exclusive, minimal screen time, premium Bandai exclusive, Kamen Rider 01 Hell Rising Hopper.
Heaven or hell? It doesn't matter.
And it's another berserker form. He kicks the living shit out of S and attempts to deal the killing blow when his attack is interrupted by someone using the 02 driver, that person being Izu. Aruto snaps out of it, obviously reliving the nightmare of the original Izu's death, and rushes to her side. The two share a tender moment, one heart to another, and Aruto realizes that this Izu has the original's memories. Aruto then apologizing for his attempted sacrificial suicide. Right afterward, they're contacted by Hirobi, who gives them the details of the mainframe, the status of the victims, and its purpose, which brings Aruto to the realization that the human brain it's all connected to is Akane's. Raihuto apparently worked on the nanotechnology in an attempt to cure Akane of a terminal illness she was diagnosed with. In fact, they weren't just partners on the research project, they were also lovers. However, the day of the test trial unfortunately fell on the day of the Daybreak incident 12 years prior, where not only did the human gears go berserk from the influence of the Ark, but so did the nanomachines inside of Akane. This caused her to die in sheer unrelenting agony as Raihuto watched, completely helpless to do anything. After it was all over, he took and digitized what was left of her consciousness. A few years later down the road, he chose to abandon his physical body and create a virtual world where he, Akane, and the Chosen would live in happily, hence the terror attack that digitized the innocent. So as it stands, ThinkNet was more of a means to an end, the victims of the attack being led to supposed paradise, and his followers left behind to rot and die. Raihuto is convinced Akane must hate him for all he's done, digitizing her and the others for some selfish desire, though Aruto assures him that that isn't the case and that Akane is waiting for him, giving him her message that she's doing just fine. Raihuto, upon hearing this, drops everything and attempts to go to her. But his effort is halted by Beru, who isn't too happy about ThinkNet's Messiah using them as sacrificial pawns to save the innocent from Earth's demise while leaving them to die. So he decides if S won't do what needs to be done, that duty will fall squarely to him.
You might not want to destroy the world, but I do!
He takes Raihuto's Eden driver and transforms into Kamen Rider Lucifer, which is a recolor of Eden. Aruto manages to secure Raihuto's escape, and surrounded, he and Izu know what needs to be done next.
Zero to rise! Kamen Rider 02. Realizing Hopper! Sorry, kid.
Meanwhile, several ThinkNet members and generals decide to spite their former messiah by attempting to kill what's left of his fiancée. Because they're assholes. Their efforts, however, are halted by Hirobi, Yua, and Guy, who take on the brigade unmorphed.
I know what I said.
And are soon joined by Jin and Fua. All five of them transform and engage the black-pilled 4chan users. Raihuto, dodging all the chaos, makes it to the server, enters the virtual world, and arrives at the chapel. But Akane isn't there. His distress is lifted as Akane walks into the chapel, donning her wedding gown. The two spend their final moments together as the mainframe, having their souls collapses around them. Aruto and Izu finish off Beru's avatar with a double rider kick with less than a second to spare before the timer on the 1000 Jacker hits 0. The Abaddon Riders deactivate now that the server has been destroyed, and the victims of the red gas attacks regain consciousness. Izu wonders if Akane and Raihuto were able to reconcile before they faded away, to which Aruto is confident that they did. Before the two head out, Aruto attempts to test Izu's new sentience by telling one of his really piss-poor jokes, but it's given a pity applause for his troubles, much to his dismay. RealxTime is a solid film. Mind you, it requires having seen all 45 episodes of 01, so it's not just something you can watch with no prior knowledge of events, and understand the full context of it. When I had first watched the movie, it had been more than a year since I watched the final episode, and it was a nice treat to see the characters again. The cast unsurprisingly did well, and I feel like every hero character was utilized to contribute something to the plot, regardless of how small it was. Speaking of the story, I thought the pacing flowed naturally. Sure, there was a time or two where the writers had to stick some joke or gag in, sometimes in tonally questionable places, but they didn't completely derail the plot for a hot minute. My biggest nitpick of the plot was Raihuto's character arc, as maybe I'm a bit jaded, but I've seen this plot 1,000 times before, so it didn't hit me like I feel as though it should have. I mean, don't get it wrong, his motivation is understandable as he's had to live with the guilt of inadvertently killing his fiancée. And look, I know this following bit might be a bit of headcanon on my part, but given that there was the possibility the world was close to getting all Terminator Judgment Day light a few months prior, maybe that's what influenced his decision to create some sort of paradise for his chosen people to escape to. Kinda screwed up, by the way, that he decided to find as many black-pilled Andes as he could and use them as sacrificial lambs. I mean, yeah, they're assholes, but they probably weren't always like that, because as we know, people aren't born evil. Except maybe this guy. One thing I did notice is the subtle parallel between Raihuto and Aruto, both having lost someone they loved due to circumstances outside their control. Blaming themselves, they embarked on a path of darkness, Aruto traversing a road of revenge against Hirobi for killing Izu. Raihuto, a road to create a world free of pain, disease, and suffering. At the end, both Raihuto and Aruto had to in some ways forgive themselves. It's probably why Aruto in the end could empathize with his enemy, because both were men in immense emotional and psychological distress as a result of their grief. Honestly, it's a nice thematic thread the writers threw in that doesn't beat you over the head with it. Something you picked up when having finished the TV show. And people are probably going to disagree with me on this, but another thing I had an issue with is Izu's restoration. It was specifically stated after Izu's death in the show that she had no backup, due to the fact that she had all the technical knowledge of the 0-1 system, and that such info posed a security threat. You could use, of course, a bit of headcanon that maybe Zeya secretly created some sort of backup prior to Izu's demise, or you could just hand-wave it away as Izu's soul just resided in Zeya itself. Look, I suppose it's the adult in me, realizing how much of an impact Izu's death had in the original final arc of 0-1, just to see it kind of undone sort of cheapens it in a way. And I've said this before, I will stan Izu eternally all day and night, but a restoration is about the same as I feel about Phillips from Kamen Rider Double. Missed opportunities for a bittersweet ending. Despite the nitpicks I have, RealxTime is a fun watch, especially if you've had a hiatus between 0-1's final episode and this. It was fun revisiting the world of this series. And hey, I've still got 2 more sequel films to take a look at, even if the reviews are mixed. So if you guys like this review and you want to watch the movie, or hell, if you want to watch 0-1 the series, you can pick up this guy from the link I posted down in the description below. While we're on the topic, if anyone from Toei is watching this, you know, since I probably have helped you make some money, maybe you can look the other way as far as future endeavors on my part in terms of copyright. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Deal? Deal? Hey, what is up everybody? Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let's get the conversation rolling and start dropping those comments in the comment section thingy below. Also, please proceed to drop me a like. It would greatly be appreciated. And hit that subscribe button as I do have more content coming in the future. And hit that bell icon for notifications because YouTube's got a nasty habit of, doing what they do. Also, you can follow me on the social media handles I've got listed right here. And, oh, what is that? Is that a Twitch channel? My name is Tanner, this is Scarlet Rider's Geek Corner, and I will see you guys next time.